On, go.
Hello and very happy new 2018 to everybody. We decided to do a quick update today. It's a bit slow. A lot of people are still hungover. But as we point out, Bitcoin never sleeps. So we're going to do a quick update on what's going on and a little price analysis by Tone, who I think spent the whole of the last night just looking at the price. Right, Tone?
Yeah, I did a video before attempting to go out. I feel much better today, which is good. I guess the drinking helped.
So yeah, let's get right into it. Jimmy, you found out something about Block X, which is an ICO and a person that you know and you liked doing that, and now all of a sudden you have a lot less respect for that person.
John Mentonis was purporting, or telling everyone that Craig Wright is Satoshi. So he sort of had a financial incentive to do that back when he was at Nchain, but apparently he's now going to Block X, which is some sort of ICO market with their own ICO or something. I don't really understand what it is that they do, but it just sounds very scammy. But yeah, he's gone from Big Blocker to Nchain to now Block X. I think we sort of missed this story. I just heard about it, but it's something that we should kind of take a look at and sort of keep in mind as he continues down this road.
So that person, he told people that Craig Wright was the real Satoshi, and basically anybody who says that is discredited in the crypto community almost by definition.
Yeah.
Right, Tom?
Plus, he worked at Nchain, which was the Craig Wright thing.
Okay. What do you think, Tom?
Yeah, no, I agree with Jimmy. Like I said, like the number of people that I respect, that I respected when I joined the community in like 2014, I think 2014 was when I became a public name. I mean, the number of people that I respected when I joined, I mean, that number is slowly shrinking to like 5 people. Like it's really, really bad. So John Matonis, I mean, once he left for Nchain, talking about Craig Wright, I mean, he lost all respect, supporting centralized project like Nchain to destroy Bitcoin. And now he's leaving that project to do an ICO. I mean, I don't know how scammier it gets, but that's what this space is. It's like the majority of people that show up to crypto show up for money. They all show up for money. I mean, granted, I had a minor motivation when I was buying my first Bitcoin, thinking that it would go up in value. But I've been doing these videos. I've been against ICOs. I've been against altcoins pretty much from the very, very beginning. And it wasn't about money. And when people reply on Twitter, like making fun of people like Andreas that had to use, his life savings of Bitcoin to continue to promote Bitcoin. People make fun of Luke Dash Jr. for, volunteering to write the Bitcoin code for the last 6 years and not having, enough Bitcoin to make him super rich. I mean, it's bad. Meanwhile, you have, the Ethereum co-founders that, cashed out and left Ethereum the moment the pre-mined token sale money rolled in, right? You have the majority of people are just motivated by money, which is why their technology is going to end up being complete and utter bullshit. It's good to get money when your technology succeeds, but when you're only motivated by money, your technology is not going to succeed. It has never worked that way, like ever. So I'm not really. I mean, it's short term, like upsetting that things like Ripple are pumping, and who knows what's going to pump next week? Maybe Stellar, maybe I don't know, Bitcoin Gold. Who knows, right? Like anything can pump next week. I mean, none of these things in the long run matter, and the majority of people that are able to make good money trading them will probably end up losing that money. That's just the way history always works.
Can I just say something real quick? There is what you just said, Tone, reminds me of something that I've been meaning to write, which is about altcoins and app coins and all of these ICOs and things like that. most of them, almost all of them actually, are trying to rent seek off of the system that they're creating. And it's kind of sad, because that's how you scam people out of their money, is you rent seek and you charge network fees or whatever to use whatever service, and take a percentage or some, usually it's the token or whatever. And it's kind of sad that that's how people think they have to make money. Instead of adding value, they want to get in the middle of these different transactions and take a cut, which is sort of the way of thinking of most bankers. And this is why people hate banks so much.
Well, like Zcash, right? They are taking 20% of every mining reward for themselves.
The developer subsidy, yeah. Developer tax is always, yeah. I won't comment much more than that.
Hey, you know what? I want to bring this up because you and I, Valentin, started talking right before we went live about, Ripple, and how you still don't understand Ripple, and how, but everyone on Twitter seems to understand Ripple perfectly, and telling us to go and do more research. Why don't you say exactly what you said earlier, then I'll follow up with my comment real quick.
Well, first of all, I would like to point out to those people that I think the criticism is fair, and that probably I haven't done enough research about the topic to fully understand it. I did watch, and we did point that out on our discussion on Saturday, watched Tone's crypto scam video. I did watch the full hour and a half with Peter Todd, who is a respected and intelligent person, and he wrote a paper on it. I didn't get the paper. What I did get was that he thought it basically doesn't work. And then I was thinking, okay, what can I derive from my own understanding about Ripple? And I think there are a few things that are pretty much set in stone. First of all, it's not decentralized. Second, it's not open source. Third, it's basically a company selling services that doesn't have a lot of cryptographic elements in it. So the point is basically, it's not really a cryptocurrency. And my thinking was, okay, who are the customers? And we asked our viewers, do you know anybody who is actually using it? Because people always say banks are using it for transfers. Okay, so the customers are banks. Nobody knows whether that is actually true or not. We haven't had a bank coming out and saying we moved so and so much money. They all talk about test cases. I can test a lot in my backyard. I'm not a bank, but anyway, and just to finish off, so if the customers are banks and I'm selling a product to banks, why am I giving it away to people to trade it and make it more expensive? So if I'm the bank and I'm the customer and I have to buy Ripple to use the transfer, why do I have to buy it off speculators who are making it more expensive for me to procure? I don't get it, because the speculators are obviously not using it.
Well, I mean, like transfer. I said the other day, this is a centralized system. And the weird way in which Ripple is designed is specifically because they want to tax every transaction and get money off of the transactions that are happening on the network, which is really kind of dumb, but that's what they're doing. Instead of like making it open source and decentralized, they decided to centralize it so they can collect taxes on everybody that's transmitting through it. It's bad economically. It's bad from a technology standpoint because it's centralized. It's bad from a social standpoint because no one gets a say except for Ripple. Ripple Labs gets to do everything that they want. I mean, it's the worst part of banks and the worst part of they basically put blockchain or some name around it, and that's more or less what they think they're doing. It's awful.
Right, so, and they, like Valentin said, like, why did they open it up to speculators, unregulated speculators, 12-year-olds trading it and getting rich off of that token when it pumps? I mean, even if they held true to the use of the Ripple token based on their, if they had a white paper or whatever their vision was, even with their vision of that token, there was absolutely no reason to open it up to speculative trading. It just makes no economic sense whatsoever.
Yeah, the original Ponzi scheme is named after Charles Ponzi, and he was selling these like U.S. stamps or some stamp credit
he was buying stamps in Italy at a fraction of the cost because they had a regulation that you could redeem them at a US post office for $1 or so, which back in the days was a lot of money.
Right.
So he bought them for 10 cents in Italy and redeemed them.
But he I mean, it wasn't getting, like, the people that were pumping money into his stamps weren't, you know, like, the amount of stamp activity was like a fraction of the actual money he was collecting. So it couldn't possibly have happened. That was one of, and this reminds me of the same
selling
thing.
proposition.
Yeah, and this feels very much the same way, right? It's nobody actually is using it or for anything, and you know, or what they purport that it's supposed to be used for. So I don't know. Yeah.
Right,
I'll
but
leave it at that.
and people have these projections, right? Like in magazines and like it's like people are projecting, oh, Ripple is going to go to $10, Ripple is going to go to $100. Do people realize that if Ripple goes to $100, its market cap becomes like $100 trillion?
Probably not. I don't know.
And that's another good one. Let's just assume, I always like to see things, let's just assume we are wrong and this whole thing works and banks are using it as a service. Then what's the proper valuation? PayPal is a system that is servicing banks or customers to transfer money between each other, and they are worth 80 billion or so. And then, so if it's really that useful, then you could say, oh, the company and the company's equity is worth, let's say, 100 billion or 200 billion. But why is the valuation done through the token if the tokens actually represent the service? This is what is confusing to me.
Yeah.
And then if the token is the money you pay to use the service, the more expensive it gets, the less you should be able to sell. So the company should correspondingly be worth less. So there's a pricing issue here too by confusing the two things.
Yeah,
I mean, and in a way, right, with the price of a token rising, Bitcoin has the same problem. A Bitcoin transaction fee is denominated in Satoshis per byte. So as the value of each Satoshi goes up, the transaction fee goes up by default, whether the mempool is empty or not, because you're pricing your transaction fee in Satoshis. And each Satoshi becomes more valuable with the value of a Bitcoin. And this is another reason why on-chain scaling cannot work. It just can't. You need to go to layer 2 solutions.
All right, I think we've talked about this enough.
So those were some follow-up thoughts on...
Sorry, one final point, because I didn't get to say it. Like people on Twitter keep telling me and Jimmy to go and research more. And what you guys have to realize, there is a point. I mean, that point is way lower for me than for Jimmy. But there is a point where I am not technologically capable of understanding Ripple. And none of you people on Twitter, most of you are not more technologically inclined than I am. So you telling me to go and research more makes absolutely no sense. You know who is more technologically inclined than me to understand it? Is Peter Todd. And he has been looking into it. And I will trust him over anyone on Twitter telling me I should do more research, especially those working at Ripple.
Well, I mean, I don't think you need to do any more research. They have all of the ripples. They have all of the ripples. They could do whatever the hell they want. Why do you need to know anything more? I mean, it's centralized. The tech. Well, all right. I think I've said everything.
All right. Yeah, we're good. Let's move on.
So again, please go to Crypto Scam podcast. Tone did a full episode with Peter Todd. I think he went into it in amazing detail that's probably above most people's heads, but that's basically our reference point. And yes, that's appealing to the authority of Peter Todd to understand things better than us, and sometimes that's what you have to do. Okay, next one. This is a big one, and Jim Rickards tweeted that out saying Bitcoin holders are getting the ICE-9 treatment in Australia because their money, their bank accounts supposedly are being frozen. We had some reports of people who could not transfer to their exchanges or who even had their normal bank accounts at the big four Australian banks frozen. And we have the banks themselves, they haven't come out and said, yep, you use Bitcoin, so we freeze your account. So this is basically a smoke and mirrors operation. Jimmy, have you looked into this more?
Yeah, I mean, it looks like there's a whole bunch of companies that decided to, start making, accounts frozen or whatever. I think this is good for Bitcoin. I think people are gonna be like, what the heck? Okay, if they could freeze based on whatever they want to do, then maybe I should control my own money. And I mean, it is inconvenient for a lot of the people, the exchanges and stuff. You're gonna have to use local Bitcoins or a foreign exchange if you're in Australia, I guess, or some other way to get money in there. But people find ways to get it. Once banks and governments try to do stuff like this, this is how the entire system gets more anti-fragile. When there's a disordering event, people find other ways around it, and sometimes those ways tend get better than the original ways that they did, which was, okay, transfer from bank account to an exchange, and then exchange, take money from the exchange and back. Now they might be doing, some sort of atomic swap on a decentralized exchange. Well, not that exists right now, but that sort of solution is going to be much more appealing in places like China and Australia. And I think this is the way that things are going to go. Is more innovative things will happen, and these dinosaur banks will get crushed.
That's fairly optimistic. What do you think, Tone?
Yeah, look, this is disappointing, but it should be expected, especially out of Australia. I mean, Australia is really, really bad when it comes to, authoritative tax regimes and just overbearing regulation. A lot of my clients are from Australia. Bitcoin is very popular in Australia, and the shutting down of these bank accounts, again, it's a double-edged sword. You can look at it as, well, Bitcoin can handle this, right? It's a peer-to-peer digital asset that doesn't censorship resistant. We don't need banks to move it one to the other, right? Having bank access is one of the things that has helped companies like Coinbase grow, and Coinbase has been a problem for Bitcoin scaling, right? So, but then again, if all of these on-ramps are totally closed, then there won't be any mass adoption, right? Because then it's harder for people to get into Bitcoin. It's a double-edged thing. You can look at it from either side. This is totally expected. This is why I have never in my life connected any Bitcoin activity of mine to my personal identity or my bank accounts or my driver's license or passport or anything. I've been on the outside of that because I think that a war on Bitcoin is coming from these first world nations.
That's not so optimistic, but I think what Tone said is absolutely true. On the one hand, it sort of proves Bitcoin's use case that Bitcoin cannot be censored. Once you have it, you have it in your wallet, you can transfer it around with limitations because the network has its limitations still. But what about all the people who don't have it yet? They need, it's the easiest to transfer your bank money to an exchange and buy Bitcoin. And once that becomes more difficult, of course, it's not as good for the price, and it's also not as good for adoption. So let's hope the positive regulations and positive view in Japan and also the United States will continue. Talking about the network itself, Jimmy, you said that the mempool has cleared out. It looks pretty okay right now.
Yeah, so you can see that. I feel like this kind of like the weather report whenever we're on air and talking about the mempool. It's like, okay, here are the traffic conditions today. Well, so it's definitely reduced quite a bit. So you had all of these like 100 Satoshi per byte transactions up here. It's reduced. It ate through those. It ate through the 70 to 100 Satoshi per byte transactions, and it also ate through about 50 to 70 Satoshi per byte transactions. It's about to get into the 30 to 50 range. It just continues to come down. This will be probably the cheapest it's been since something like last like November or something like that. And it'll continue to go down as long as there aren't like a lot of transactions happening at once. But yeah, it's definitely looking really good. I imagine that there will it might be due to just people not transacting as much because of the holidays. Who knows? It might go back. The mempool might go back up. But all those people that were complaining about everything back when fees were really high over here, well, now's your chance to go move some coins, right? Like if you've been meaning to move them for whatever reason, maybe you want to split your Bitcoin Gold or something like that. Now's the time to do it. Now's the time to do it.
Right, and in addition, this goes back to what I said earlier, and people don't realize this, that remember, one Satoshi is now 70% cheaper than it was 2 weeks ago, right? So not only are
70%, you mean like 35%?
Sorry, I mean like 35%, right? Because we went from 20,000 to 13,000 in Bitcoin. Sorry, guys. Don't do math on live air. Yeah, so each Satoshi is now like an additional 30% cheaper, right? And this is why on-chain scaling will never, ever work if you expect the value of your token to rise, because then your Satoshi value goes up. No one thinks about that. They just want to, follow the propaganda of people that are spamming the mempool, screaming that the mempool's too, expensive and too big.
Yeah, a lot of those people are thinking very short term. I can't get my transaction in right now, therefore the whole network is broken. Just wait, be patient. This is a long-term thing. This is a 5 to 10 year thing, not something that you're gonna have everything be okay in like 2 weeks.
Right, but they all want to buy their cups of coffee with crypto now and get their bank account shut down the next day, right? I mean, that's what these guys.
Yeah. So you can't have everything. I'd rather have long-term value than short-term transactions, and I think that's the attitude that most people in crypto should have if you're in this for the investment.
Sure. So let's also not forget that the SegWit hasn't been implemented by most big providers, which would give a boost to the network. And then second, that the mempool gets spammed by malicious actors periodically, and then they complain about them. High fees. I personally never had an issue. I don't move the coins very often, but I personally never had an issue, and I never paid $30 in transactions.
Oh, I have. I actually paid $30 for a transaction 2 days ago when I was in New York. I just needed it to get done really, really fast. And I've paid $100 for a transaction when I was in Bogota a few weeks ago. Yeah, so no, I've been these high fees hurt me because I actually, like, contrary to prior statements by me, I use Bitcoin multiple times a day, and these fees do come into play, which is why it bothers me that these big companies have not implemented SegWit, because by them not implementing SegWit, it hurts those that have implemented SegWit along with everyone else, and also just the spammers of the Bitcoin blockchain. Even companies, like Omni and, that are just unnecessary. They're just
Counterparty, yeah.
Counterparty, yeah. And I've never been a fan of either of them. I mean, look, I know everyone wants their stock market on the blockchain, but we're just not ready for that yet. I mean, that's like a decade away.
So we need the price to go up so you can afford those high fees, right, Tone?
Let's go take a look at the price.
Last day and first day, we finish a week, a day, a month, and a year.
By the way, if you do want to sort of like send something, I would suggest you look at this chart and try to sort of predict going forward, because it tends to be a pretty good way. Even like right now, there are transactions that are paying like way more than they should. There's a bunch of transactions that are paying like 300 Satoshi per byte. But if you're willing to wait a day, you might be able to get it for 1/10 of that. So, think about these things instead of, look at charts like this. And this requires some education and looking and guessing sometimes. And you do have replace by fee on some certain wallets. If your wallet doesn't have it, go demand it from your wallet provider, right? Like, okay, I'm gonna try 30, then 40, then 50, depending on how long it takes. That's the way the whole network should work, and it'll be a lot more efficient and cheaper for people if they all do that instead of just sort of paying the highest fee there is right now.
Yeah, no, and again, like I use Green Address, SegWit addresses. It has replace by fee. It has child pays for parent. So if someone is sending you Bitcoin or you sending somebody Bitcoin, you can always, change the fee to get it done when you need to get done. All right, guys, let me get the screen share, and we'll talk about the price. And again, my very simple metric in deciding my fee when I'm home in front of a computer, I don't normally do this when I'm out, is I go to TradeBlock and I just take a look at the fee average, right? And right now it's 70. So that will probably get it done within a block or two for you. All right, let's usual disclaimer. Please educate yourself on trading if you're going to get into trading. It's very different than buying and holding. The particular indicators that I like to use as my most latest metric is number 6. Hey guys, you mind muting, please? Is number 6 on time analysis. All right, let's go take a look at the price. Here's the weekly chart. The week is starting off a bit on a rough patch. This would be kind of bad, right? Because the last time we had color flips, you can just go back here. We had a red 1, and then the red 3 was catastrophic. Then we got SegWit, and everything was good. The color never flipped here. Again, we continued going up. Everything looked rosy. Now the color is flipping. So if we stay with a red 1 by the end of the week, and the week just started today, pretty much. But remember, there's no shorting yet, right? Like the weekly chart tells you to short only when you have a red number trading lower than a prior red number. So at the earliest, it would be next week. The long-term chart is going to go bearish. But it's all about the daily, because I think every single trader is now paying attention to this triangle, and it continues to coil into a point. And if you're curious about what that means, you just want to go and Google symmetric triangles, right? Symmetric triangle pattern, right? Then you go straight into Google Images, and you have lots and lots of examples of how these things end. And the reality of the situation is when you have one of these, it's almost 50-50, right? I mean, I don't know how accurate these statistics are, but here's one chart just found on the internet where you have a 54% chance of breaking up to the upside versus a 46% chance to the downside. These are not the kinds of percentages I would advise a trader to. It's almost a coin flip. So you can place the bet if you like. I would wait to see the breakout. Another way of looking at these triangles is if it comes in from the bottom and makes this triangle, there's a higher probability of a breakout. The size of the breakout is about the same size as the fat part of the triangle. So if we apply this picture to what we have currently, we did come in from the bottom to make this triangle. Therefore, there is a slightly higher probability of breaking out, but it's still almost 50-50, right? It's 54 versus 46% based on the other website, and you can look at others. It also depends how you built the triangle, right? Like the triangle that we're building does look kind of like this, right? Like if I go here, it looks a little bit like that. So let's see how it ends. We don't know. Now, to me, it's very, very disappointing that you have something like, no, it's different. It's disappointing that you have, a complete garbage like Ripple pumping to no end. And that's why I keep saying Bitcoin can't possibly be in a bubble. When you have things like Ethereum, like Dash, like Ripple, like Cardano is about to overtake Ethereum for market cap. I mean, it's unbelievable. So how can Bitcoin be in a bubble when these almost non-decentralized useless tokens have such valuations? So I'm not too worried for Bitcoin, but it's a rough environment, right? There's a lot of trolls that people like me now have to deal with. Here's the 4-hour chart that continues to, be a thorn and very difficult to trade, which is why I continue to say, to me, anytime a symmetric triangle is identified, it just creates these no trade zones. Now, the no trade zones, shrink in range the closer you get to the tip of the triangle. But I don't mess with symmetric triangles until they break out one way or another. And then you have to worry about a false breakout. You've seen those before as well. Let's see if it happens this time. Here's the 4-hour chart. I mean, it bounced off of the 9 buy. Now, if you took a stab right off the 9, there was money to be made. But if you waited for the metrics to flip, for positive numbers to be above for green numbers to be above prior green numbers, these trades are once again giving you a slight loss. So you might want to consider exit. Like the moment there is a color flip, you should not have any position in this asset. Now, these dotted lines continue to, contract as well. Everything is coming into a point. And look, Bitcoin was under $1,000 a year ago, right? Or just at 1,000 1 year ago. We're still at 13,000. Granted, it's not 20,000. Still did well. And let's see. Let's see what happens. It's hard for me to see any 9s happening on the 4-hour chart at this point because the daily is really coming into a tip. So I am expecting a move one way or another. The hourly chart is, again, just nothing can break out. Nothing can go anywhere. There was a 9 here, and we're going down. We have not had a 9. If this hour comes back down, we could get a 9 next hour, giving us a bit of a bounce. So let's see. Hopefully that would be a short-term trade for someone, but I wouldn't advise trading this environment at the moment. That's pretty much it for me. I guess I'll mention 2 weeks away from my trading seminar in Singapore. And I have 10 seats remaining. So 10 seats, I know this says 12, but I need to update. 10 out of 20 seats are spoken for, so there's still 10 seats remaining in Singapore before I go on the blockchain cruise and speak on there. That would be January the 15th, the day after my seminar. All right, back to you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Tone. So keep things in perspective. Tone says we were at 1,000 last year. Most people probably didn't think we'd be at 13,000 this year. Of course, it's a bit disappointing that it's down from 20K, but actually these corrections are important, and long term they should be beneficial. And just follow Tone. And
I'm still here. I'm still in Medellin, Colombia, the rest of the week. Hopefully I'll try and get some work done. And New Year begins. I gotta tweet out my New Year's resolutions. Jimmy, you gonna do that? You gonna tweet out your New Year's resolutions?
Well, I did last year. That didn't turn, or at least I did predictions.
No,
that didn't turn out.
Predictions. No. I'm gonna do New Year's resolutions. I'm gonna come up with my 3 top New Year's resolutions in crypto, and I'm gonna come up with 3 New Year's resolutions in my personal life because this past year I spent way too much time on crypto and not enough time on my personal life.
Okay. Yeah. Well, who can blame you? You've gotten really popular. Maybe I'll think of a good one and maybe post it and pin it. I'm not sure. We'll see.
So New Year's, we expect some New Year's resolutions from Tone and Jimmy. Thanks everybody for watching. Very happy New Year, and we'll be seeing you soon tomorrow.
Thanks, guys.
All right. This song is done.